Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Today is February the 7th, 2023. My name is Joe Laban. I'll be chairing the complaint committee review for next week's board meeting. Before we get started, Dr. Gandhi, could you take a roll call, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Leyba,
Present.
Ms. Nair,
Here.
Mr. Thorwald,
Here.
Mr. Dang.
Present.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Dang was kind enough to sit in for Ms. Walmsley as she had a conflict today. So thank you, Mr. Dang.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Dang. Appreciate that. Okay, conflicts of interest, Mr. Thorwald,
None.
Ms. Nair.
Yes, 4E, it's 22-0551,
Okay,
and I'll get that to the board as soon as possible.
okay. Mr. Dang.
I don't have anything, sir.
Okay, I have 4S and I have submitted that to Ms. Kjellnevang as well. All right, go ahead and we will jump right in. Tab 4, consent agenda complaints. 4A 22-0503. Patient filed a complaint alleging that the pharmacy dispensed another patient's medication to her. During the investigation, the compliance officer observed a clerk performing patient counseling.
My thought on this is that we might need a conference.
Mhm.
I just feel like there could be I have some questions about their processes and possible gaps.
Mhm.
The clerk counseling, and just a lot of things happened in this situation I'd like to break down.
I had the same feeling. That's what I have in my notes as well.
I'll make that my recommendation or my motion if you'd like.
Perfect. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Seconds.
Okay, second by Mr. Dang. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. 4B 22-0271. An appeal after an executive director dismissal. The board received a complaint from a pharmacy owner that a former pharmacist employee accessed his customer list through his pharmacy computer system and used this list to request transfers for these patients.
So my understanding is that they say they share the same software. Is that what you guys understood as well? So they would have access to this information, shared information.
I don't think shared, but have the same software. So the reports could look the same.
Okay.
I still stand behind I feel like this is more of a battle between each other and business versus where the board needs to be stepping into. I feel it's a legal matter and not a board matter, and I stand behind the executive director's dismissal.
I agree.
Okay, I will make that my motion. Mr. Thorwald?
I was just going to say, I also concur with you.
Okay, have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. 4C 22-0409. The pharmacy dispensed a medication that caused a drug disease interaction that resulted in the patient being hospitalized.
I don't know that we have enough conclusive evidence in this one. My recommendation was to dismiss.
Ms. Nair, I had literally the same notes. It could be that the therapy prescribed was necessary. We don't have enough information to look at that and say it was or wasn't. And then even then, this was the prescriber and the patient, and there was not an error that was made. So it's my opinion to dismiss that as well.
I'll make that my motion.
I'll second that. Any other discussion? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. 4D 22-0567. A pharmacy notified the board office of an insurance claim settlement that was the result of a patient allegation of receiving 2 medications mixed in the prescription bottle.
Do we know if the patient took both these medications? Like, were they both prescribed at some point?
I think I would refer Ms. Richardson if you're available to comment on that.
Hi, this is Sharon. No, the patient was not prescribed both of those medications, only one of them.
Ms. Richardson, what was confusing to me is it sounded like in the reading that the tablet would not have been able to be dispensed out of the automation. Would you say that it doesn't mean an error didn't occur, but it probably didn't occur out of the Uyama cell? I just wanted your comment on that.
Well, both medications were stored in the Uyama in 2 different cells, but I believe it was in the pharmacist's response in terms of if the 2 medications got mixed into the incorrect cell, it appeared based on the size of the tablet that it wouldn't have been able to come through that particular cell. It wasn't geared for that cell. In addition, as far as they were aware, they did not receive any other complaints of those medications being mixed. And if in reality somebody filled that cell with 2 medications, and it was able to be dispensed, you would imagine that going to more than one patient.
That's what I kind of thought too. Ms. Richardson, did you see anywhere in your investigation the actual bottle? Was there any kind of proof from the patient, picture or anything?
No, this actually had occurred in June of 2021. And I don't believe it was reported it might have been reported initially to them, but the settlement was done until over a year later. So we're
Okay.
looking at something that happened well over a year ago.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
couple questions. One, was this patient ever issued a prescription for this medication at any other time? Second part of that question was if there was a settlement, what proof did they provide that this actually happened and that the patient did not accidentally mix them themselves?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at. Thanks.
So the patient only was prescribed one of these, was never prescribed the second medication. So unless, was filled at a different pharmacy, but not through this company.
And that's what I was asking. Person might have had a prescription from 5 years before and they mixed them by accident. So is there any way to track if a person has received a prescription previously through any pharmacy for that matter? And
No, only from this particular pharmacy. We wouldn't know what pharmacy to go to and look back that far for other records. And then in terms of the settlement, we're not privy to a lot of that detail. That's a confidential company document that wouldn't be required to be provided to us in terms of their settlement. They're only required to let us know that a settlement was made.
Personally, I don't see any enough evidence to take any action without that kind of information.
The only one thing, Mr. Thorwald, that, and I'm leaning your direction too, is that there is a record keeping issue. There was no initials. Ms. Richardson, if you could confirm it for me, no initials on the record keeping of the actual logging of the medication into the UYAMA. And if that was the case, I was in favor of a non-disciplinary letter of concern for Mr. Ewing on that.
Yeah, the concern with that was it only showed an intern replenishing the cell. There was no record of a pharmacist verifying what went into the cell, which is required. Both sets of initials are required on that log. And then if you look in the reading, there were some issues with the actual daily log book that the pharmacists sign, indicating their name, signature, and initials of whenever they're working, that they're responsible for the prescriptions that day. There was some missing information on that made it, had to do a little bit more research to figure out who was actually working on some of those days.
Mr. Chair, is there any kind of records that are kept from that date of the quantities of medication available for each of those things? Any differentials on a daily basis could verify that there's a shortage of one versus the other to verify that this might have gone into the bottle?
I guess you could, it's my opinion, it didn't happen through the automated dispensing. It could have happened through another process, because it just, the way those machines are engineered, tablets have to be fitted to come out of them. You can't just put in any tablet, they have to be fitted. So I've kind of decided that probably couldn't have happened, but it could have happened somewhere else. It's just the way it is. Now, this is speculation and I don't want to do that in this case, but what I do know is that there are some record keeping issues, and that's why I feel a non-disciplinary letter of concern to Mr. Ewing would be appropriate in this case. Don't feel comfortable moving on something so long ago that we don't have the proof at our fingertips. A settlement could mean that there was wrongdoing, or could mean that there wasn't wrongdoing. It's a settlement. You don't know. But I do know that the record keeping could have been improved, and Ms. Richardson just kind of confirmed that. I would make that my motion and look for a second.
Second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, good discussion. 4E 22-0551. A delivered drug was exposed to possible excessive temperatures.
I'm recused, just a reminder.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hyber, I don't know if you're available. I'm out of my normal place where I take the meeting. I can't 100% see the screen and the reading. Did you, if I remember, there was confirmation of a temperature deviation on this one. Is that correct?
I am here today. Good
Okay.
afternoon, everyone.
Good.
Yes, that is correct. There are temperature histories that I have attached to the investigation report. They start on approximately page 167.
Okay.
I might also point out that the respondent did provide some stability data that they received. It's rather dated. It goes back to July of 2002. It was provided to an earlier company that this current permit holder merged with. So that's they had that document in their possession. So that's also on page 1. It starts on 163 for your perusal.
Okay.
I have a question with regard to products that are put in a mailbox or mailed. Is there anything that requires that product be directly let me rephrase that. It seems like any product that is mailed has a potential issue of temperature differences, unless it's in some kind of box that's has some kind of cooling in it or is delivered differently. How does a person know whether it was in the mailbox or it was somewhere else or it was mishandled in this process?
Mr. Hyber, do you want to take a stab at that? I don't have a real great answer, Mr. Thorwald. That this is a kind of a topic that we've had several times. There are certain medications that require certain type of shipping. There are temperatures that go both hot and cold on products, and the amount of time that they can deviate in that area. But I'll pause here and let Mr. Hyber try to answer that question.
Mr. Thorwald, you raise a very good question. I'm, having managed mail order operations in the past, I mean, that's a big challenge that all mail order delivery, providers have to work with. And obviously there are some medications that are that have to be protected much more than others. So if you had like a solid dosage form in response to your question, they're much more resistant. Absent us actually retrieving this product and performing some type of potency test on it, we can't tell if it was damaged by sitting in a mailbox for X number of minutes at the temperatures that were present for that time frame. But the case with this situation is the company does not ship this with refrigeration, and they're doing it based upon that older guidance. And on those particular 2 days that we did see that the temperatures exceeded that guidance, the duration timeframes are in there. One order was about 7 hours, and the other order sat or the temperatures exceeded that time frame about 7 hours on one day and about 6 hours on the other. It's up to the board here to decide, whether that merits, some type of response.
I have a couple of follow-on questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
When a company mails these products, is there, given the wild ranges of temperatures here in Arizona, is it possible to look at what the ranges of temperature are going to be the following days? Should a company, when something is mailed, mail it in such a way that somebody knocks on the door and says, which you do with the U.S. Postal Service, or if it's delivered by their own delivery service? It seems like if you're going to have with these kind of temperatures we have here in the summertime, it would be almost impossible unless it's cooled in a pack of some type, or unless somebody knocks on that door to be able to control that temperature at all.
Well, this company in particular has technology that does look at the temperature of the shipping location and then the location to where it's going, and it determines how much refrigerant to place into the packaging.
Where I'm also going with that is if somebody, when something gets into the mailbox, if it's done by the U.S. Postal Service and they, for whatever reason, don't check their mailbox, they got tied up, their kids got busy in school, they got a flat tire, whatever, and they got delayed, then whose fault is it that medication sat in there? And how do they know that it's going to be there that particular day? Do they get an email or some kind of correspondence to watch for it, to be assured that it's not out there too long? I mean, I'm new to this, as you all know, so maybe these are naive questions, but it just seems like these are things I would logically think about.
Well, no, they're very good questions. And many of these companies have what's called a high touch business model, and they do reach out to schedule these deliveries. They'll do it for sure on medications that are extremely expensive, because what happens if something sits in a mailbox and a client calls in, that more than likely they're going to have to replace it. So that's going to eat into their, bottom line, so to speak. So rather than having those high replacement costs, they will schedule many of these shipments. And in the case here, if you see in the response down at the latter part of the summary, they even mentioned that they were going to give this particular patient a contact person to reach out to in order to coordinate future orders for these particular medications.
You know, just looking at it, I think this would be, I'd said a letter of concern to ESI for shipping temperatures. It's such a big topic. I don't know if we have enough right now or time to do anything more than that. They replaced the medication, in my opinion. This would be a letter of concern to ESI for shipping temperatures.
Is that a motion?
I'll make that my motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, good questions. Thank you. 4F 22-0575. A patient was given an intravenous dose of digoxin that was 10 times the normal dose.
Mr. Chairman, this is Kevin.
Yes.
For this particular case, I would suggest that we should have a conference, invite all the members, pharmacist, physician, and nurse to the board for a face-to-face conference.
So I think we could invite them, but they don't have to appear. We don't regulate the nurses or the physicians, but we do regulate the pharmacy and the permit. So we could invite the pharmacist that the order entry, if I remember, order entry was done on the floor, pharmacist overrode the DUR, and that would be
correct. Looks like
like
I'm not too sure, but it looks like based on the narrative, it seems like the physician conveyed the order to the nurse. Didn't mention whether it's telephonically or verbally or whatever. So that's why I wanted to meet with the physician and the nurse to gather more information. But it's there must be a breakdown of communication somewhere along the line that initiated by the physician and by the time it gets to the pharmacist, and which has led to a fatality of the patient. So this is, in my opinion, it is a serious case.
Yeah, Mr. Deng, I might recommend to you that if a motion is to a conference, that the second part of it be for the board staff to refer to the appropriate licensing board of the other disciplines and let them take a stab at that. But I do think, and Ms. Galvin, you can comment on that. I think we have the pharmacist in front of us to address in the permit.
I think it would be best to make any possible referrals to other licensing boards after the board decides the matter before them.
Okay.
So I do think we need a conference, and then what I'm hearing from Ms. Galvin would be to hold those after the conference, then take a look at
Okay.
the referral at that point.
So for now, the conference will only include the pharmacist and the PIC.
The permit and the
permit
pharmacist named. Mhm.
Okay, so that would be my motion.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion, a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, 4G. A patient filed a complaint after the pharmacist informed her that she was given the incorrect COVID booster vaccine.
I think this is similar to a med error, and that we have generally treated it the same. So I would say 3 hours of CE to the pharmacist. That's above what's required. In administration would be best, in my opinion. So I'm just going to put that out there. And to be done within 90 days. Sorry, general terms.
Okay.
I have another question here. When a patient, how do you know that the patient didn't really request the one that they got versus what they said they asked for? How is there any record keeping that would show that? Because it's just as easy for somebody to say, I want this, meaning they wanted something else. So how do you define that?
Mr. Thorwald, I can address that. In this case, the pharmacist discovered his error and contacted the patient to let her know. So with the COVID boosters, the booster dose that was given is one that's no longer approved for use in the adult population. In fact, it's in August of 22, it wasn't approved for persons over 12. And then as of October of 22, they removed the authorization for use in persons over 5 years of age. So in theory, it's unclear why this booster is even being stocked in the pharmacy for use. So when the patient asked for a COVID booster vaccine, that's what she was given. However, she was given one that was no longer approved for her age group. She wouldn't know that. And it was discovered by the pharmacist, and he contacted her.
Thank you.
So I am in support of 3 hours of CE. I'd like it in immunizations with standard terms. And then
Second.
maybe, confirming that they have corrected it and the state site has the right information. Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can I
Any
ask
opposed?
one other quick question?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
It seems like when the PIC or the pharmacist, whoever is giving the shot, they would already know that they've got what this medicine is approved for. And I don't see how somebody, unless they're just brain dead for the day, gives something like that to somebody. And if they do, it doesn't seem like a training issue to me. It seems more like just not paying attention to what they're doing, being inadequate in their duties. And I just wanted to say that.
Understood.
I mean, my hope is that continuing education and this error will be helping
Mhm.
lead to better process in the future.
Then I'm also for yes.
Okay.
Aye.
Yep. Comment understood, though. So let's just redo that real quick. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. 4H 22-0676. An incorrect medication bottle was dispensed to a patient.
So this was one of the 4 were incorrect of the bottles, and they are look-alike, definitely look-alike. Right?
Mhm.
So, I have a note and it had a page number attached to it, but the page numbers aren't the same now. So I'm trying to find my question here. Oh, okay. Right. It was just a question about their corrective actions.
Gotcha. I'm in support of 3 hours of continuing education and error prevention with standard terms, but I'll open it up for conversation.
For both pharmacists and techs, or just pharmacists?
Both.
Yep, whoever was involved in touching that to the end stage. Mhm.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
My little note to myself is that in the corrective action, they asked for retraining of all the technicians, and I feel like it should have been retraining of the staff
Mhm.
because everyone could have learned from this, but I agree with what you're saying.
Okay, so I have a motion and I have a second.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 4I 22-0587. A pharmacy dispensed a fraudulent verbal prescription issued for a quantity exceeding the prescriber's prescriptive authority. Looking at the whole case, I was in favor of 3 CEs in law with the standard terms, non-disciplinary, for the pharmacist involved.
Yeah,
And the reason I said law is the prescriptive amount. Ms. Nair?
I'm not against it. I had letter of concern. But I could go either way, to be honest. Just a reminder that it was a nurse practitioner who wrote for higher quantity than what they could provide outside of their scope.
It was a fraudulent. So the reason why I went with the 3 CEs is because the pharmacist could have looked at the quantity and said, maybe I should give the NP a call, and it could have been caught at that time. But what happened was it was phoned in, fraudulently dispensed.
Oh.
There's really, that's 2 issues.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I just want to weigh in, folks, to set the record straight. The issue didn't involve a nurse practitioner, it was a physician assistant. And those nurse practitioners don't have that particular limitation. So
that's right. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And I also didn't cite for the fact that the script was fraudulent. I mean, the real issue is the fraudulent script could have been caught if because obviously the fraudster called in an incorrect quantity in respect to the practitioner's identity he or she was using. So it's a possibility if the proper knowledge and following of the law would have been in place, this fraudulent order could have been caught right there with one call to the issuing practitioner concerning the day supply issue. So
I have a question. The perpetrator of the fraudulent request, what's the reporting requirements for the pharmacy or the staff to let law enforcement know about that, or is there something?
if you're directing that to me, no, there isn't any. I mean, obviously, they could report it if they want to. We don't have anything in rule or statute that forces them to do that or compels them to do that.
It seems like there should be to me. If somebody's trying to cheat the system there, they're going to do it at other pharmacies.
Okay, so there's I'll make a motion for the 3 CEs in law with standard terms.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 4J, prescription filled for incorrect strength.
I recommend 3 hours CE for the pharmacist and intern above what's required with the standard terms in
Second.
midair.
I have a
Agreed.
motion and a second. All
I
those in
thought-
favor?
It was a medication error.
Yeah, and medication error prevention.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 4K 22-0590, a patient received a drug product different than the drug product that was requested. I feel like it's very convoluted, and I don't really see that an error happened with the dispensing part of it. A selection through a little bit of confusion is kind of the source of the error, because both of the prescriptions were on the profile. I have in my notes to dismiss.
I agree.
Kevin.
There was good follow-up as well with the patient, so appreciated that they handled that as well. But yes, I agree with you. I'll make a motion to dismiss.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. 4L 22-0648. A new prescription was labeled and dispensed with the wrong directions.
I'd recommend 3 hours of CE for the pharmacist above what's required in medication error prevention.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
with standard terms.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Let's see, I heard something. So we got, was anybody opposed?
No.
Okay, thank you. Must have been my side. 4M 22-0659. A patient was administered a COVID vaccine in place of the requested vaccine to treat pneumonia.
I'd recommend 3 hours of CE in vaccinations for the pharmacist
Second.
above what's required.
Okay, I have a motion and I have a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So Kevin, were you opposed?
No. I am sorry.
Okay,
I'm in support of that.
okay, thank you. All right, 4N 22-0664. Pharmacy technician filed a complaint that a patient called in a panic, having no idea what medication she was given.
So I had a question about this one. Tech trainees are not required to do CE, right? Am I correct in
That's
that
correct.
understanding?
That's
So
correct.
if we assigned someone, or if we, made that a recommendation to do a CE, would that be okay, even though it's not required?
Yeah, that could be one of your options to take a CE course.
Okay, all right. I mean, I guess it is above what's required generally, so this is above what's required, above 0. Okay, then I guess I will, my recommendation would be to do 3 hours CE in med error prevention. Or I don't know, if specifically it would be great if it was counseling related, but med error prevention, I guess.
I agree with you, Kristen, but I think we should also open a complaint for the PIC. And the reason why I suggest that is because we should hold the PIC accountable for this too, this particular error. Because as a PIC, it is your job to explain to the technician, especially the technician in training, that any new medication has to be counseled by patient. So
There's
this
no
person new to the field.
There's no
I'm sorry?
indication that they weren't trained properly. It's just that they didn't follow the process.
I think the one thing that you do have though, Kevin, is you could do a letter of concern to the pharmacist for no documentation of consultation, because that day there was nothing. Is that correct? As the compliance officer, could they confirm that? Mr.
Yes, that is correct.
So
There was no
you know,
counseling record found.
if you're on staff and you're in the pharmacy and you're doing XYZ and the individual breaks the policy and procedure and doesn't tell you that there's somebody that needs a consultation, it's to me, that's unfair to discipline that pharmacist. However, that pharmacist knows that there is a requirement for consultation throughout the day. So I'm in favor of 3 CEs in law. I think it should be law, not error prevention for that technician. With standard terms.
Okay, I'd be
And
good.
then letter of concern for no documentation of consultation for the pharmacist.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, I'll make that a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll
Second.
second.
Okay, second. All those in
We all
favor?
second.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. 4022-0638. Pharmacist graduate intern performing the duties of a licensed pharmacist.
I was wondering if a conference would be helpful so we could hear from the intern about what was seen on the video.
Could we do this, Ms. Galvin? Can we do can I make a motion for legal advice on this question and then come back? Is that something we can do in complaint review?
Yeah. We've done it.
The agenda
Okay.
provides for legal advice.
Okay, I'd like to do that. Team, I have a question that's specific that if we get answered might help us.
Okay, great.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second,
All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are back on 4022-0638.
I would recommend a conference. I'm curious to hear more what the people involved would have to say about what happened.
Have a motion for a conference. Do you have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Mr. Thorwald, were you an aye or a nay?
Was that an aye?
He's
Ye-
on mute.
Sorry, aye,
You support a conference?
yes.
Okay,
Conference it is. Okay, 4P 22-0528. A pharmacist notified the board her license was voluntarily surrendered in Maryland. Board staff, the only question I have is, we don't, the findings of fact in the case are mentioned and there's a disagreement on those with the individual, but we have no idea what those findings of facts are. It would help if we could see them.
Mhm.
Looks like Sandy's on this one, or a compliance officer. Could you comment on that? Because it changes the landscape if they're findings of fact of controlled substance diversion versus.
but really, the bottom line is that she voluntarily surrendered.
Yeah, so what
But
was the
she's
reason?
wanting
though?
to keep her Arizona license, right?
She, well, yeah, she wants the matter dismissed. But if we get into parsing out which findings of fact are, what we have is what she consented to, is a voluntary surrender. Otherwise, we're
But there
going to
was
be,
a complaint. Can we find out what the complaint was that led her to surrender her license?
Yes. Because that could have impact on how I feel about today. Like, for
'Cause,
instance,
yeah,
I'm
I
saying it
wouldn't
was,
feel
but if it
comfortable.
was one CE of not done of continuing education versus something else that was big, and instead of going to hearing, which is she did not want to do, says I'll just surrender it, move. It would make a difference for me to feel good about protecting Arizona if I knew what the complaint was in that case.
okay.
Same. Can we table it to try to get more information?
I'll second that.
If we can get it before the full board, that would be, then we could take it at the board meeting.
Okay, Ms. Snare, you have a motion, and so table it, try to get more information. And then
Yeah,
I will
motion
second
to-
that. All those in
Second.
favor?
Aye,
Any opposed?
Aye.
When staff is clear what they need to request, please, is that right?
Yeah, we need to request the complaint from Maryland. And Ms. Snare, were you opposed to it?
Opposed to what?
The motion, it came in on my side after. So I said all in favor. Were you in favor of it?
Oh. Yeah, I thought I made the motion and I was in favor of it.
No, I mean the vote, not the motion, the vote. We're okay. I thought I heard something else come out of you after it, but if
No,
I didn't.
no, maybe there's something behind me.
All right,
And I
Okay.
would think, in addition to the complaint, any investigative report or supporting documentation would be
yes,
helpful.
Yes,
I agree.
context.
Okay, 4Q 22-0686. A 14-year-old received Fluzone HD vaccine instead of Fluorex Quad.
I just want to note that I appreciated their corrective action plan here. They did a really nice job with that. I would recommend 3 hours of continuing education and vaccinations, immunizations for the pharmacists that go beyond what's required with standard terms.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 4R, pharmacy allegedly documented the incorrect site of administration and the person administering the vaccine on the paperwork.
I was thinking a letter of concern would be appropriate for each of the people involved.
I really didn't see that there was an error made. There was the sticker put on the consent and release form was switched. So maybe Mr. Castaneda could comment on that, because no error was made that reached the patient incorrectly. They got the right drug, the right everything, but it was switched. And I think I wonder if Ben could comment on that.
But it appears that they got the correct vaccines in the arm as requested when they went for their appointment, and the paperwork that was given to them was documented incorrectly.
Oh, okay. So we don't have an actual.
For record keeping.
So, Mr. Castaneda, we don't have an actual error made. The patient got the right drug that they wanted. We have an incorrect record keeping on the consent release form.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, Ms. Nair?
I could go either way, honestly. Either a letter of concern for record keeping or dismissal.
Mr. Thorwald, Mr. Dang, what is your thoughts?
I'm leaning towards dismissal.
I have mixed feelings. The record keeping probably would be helpful in the future. If it happens once, it'll happen again. But if you're distracted, I would say dismissal.
Right. I'll make that my motion. Dismiss.
Okay, I have a motion and I have a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 4S 22-0649. I'm recused on this one.
Okay, I will take it. A patient alleged that the pharmacy technician administered the incorrect vaccine, that the vaccine administration area was filthy with dirt and blood, and the technician did not wipe her arm with alcohol before administering the vaccine. I did note that the incorrect manufacturer was documented. There was no proof that there was unsanitary conditions.
Kristen,
Anybody
this
have
is
any-
Sharon. Can I just give you a little bit
Please.
of clarification too?
Yeah, that's great.
The concern that I had when I was investigating this is that it was processed through the system incorrectly. The right vaccine was given because the pharmacist checked the vaccine to the administration record and the consent statement. So the right vaccine ended up being administered. My concern is it was processed incorrectly in the computer. The pharmacist obviously doesn't see a label or anything to verify if it was typed correctly. And when I looked at the records of that, the pharmacist who did the data entry verification, for some reason, it's recorded on a different date. So the data entry verification doesn't appear like it occurs before that vaccine is administered. And so that was kind of my concern with that, is we don't have a pharmacist verifying data entry prior to it being administered. But again, the correct vaccine was given. It was processed incorrectly, therefore reported incorrectly to the registry, and what the patient saw when she received her paperwork appeared to be incorrect because of what was processed through the system.
Thank you for that. Any discussion or comments? I was leaning toward a letter of concern for documentation for both of the pharmacists.
Second. Is that a motion?
I'll make that my motion, and Mr. Dang seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. 4T22-0672. A husband and wife allege they received the incorrect COVID vaccines.
I didn't see enough evidence here to support that there was an error. I
think
guess my
again, we had
recommendation
the-
would be,
We had the correct vaccine given to
This-
the correct patient, to your point.
my
This is-
recommendation is to,
This is the one where the sticker was switched on the consents.
Mhm.
Mr. President, 4T and 4U are together. It's husband and wife.
The same- yeah,
Mr. Wagner,
yeah.
that
Well,
vaccine was given, everything was done correctly. They just put the stickers on that they initial off on the wrong consent and release forms. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there was no evidence to indicate the wrong vaccines were given. The information was correct in the computer. It was correct on their vaccination cards. The stickers were incorrect on the patient's information that they took home.
Gotcha. Ms. Nair, were you making a motion to dismiss?
I make a motion to dismiss 4T and 4U.
I will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, 4V 22-0688. Complainant indicated her medication was sold through the drive-through to an unknown person, and that individual now has her name, full address, and her medication.
I don't know if there was enough evidence to support a violation.
One thing you do have is a concern for lack of consultation.
I agree.
But otherwise, Ms. Nair, I agree with you on that.
Mhm.
Any other comments or questions?
Now, my recommendation was dismissed, but I understand your point about consultation.
Okay, I make a motion for a letter concern for a consultation to the technician and pharmacist.
Second.
I have a motion
Okay.
and a second.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 4W, a compliance officer could not inspect a facility and the permittee failed to comply with the subpoena. Question I quick have is, do we have confirmation that they're still operating? Board staff?
Can we revoke her license? Not the pharmacist license?
Will you?
How about we move to a hearing?
Yeah, you would
So
first
we
have to move,
take action.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
You would first have to move it to formal hearing for a revocation.
Okay. That's a good idea. Then I'll make a motion to
Yeah,
move it
that's
to hearing.
second.
Wait a second. Let me get my question answered real quick. Do we have proof that they're still operating, board staff?
I'm going to jump in here because Elizabeth Dodge is on vacation.
Okay,
So I'm going to check and see if the permit is still open. So hang on this.
Yes.
Yes, the permit has been verified is still open. So one could assume they are still operating.
okay. So here's what I might recommend. So we have a compliance officer could not inspect a facility and the permittee failed to comply with subpoena. So failing to comply with subpoena is something we can address separately, but to move to hearing for revocation based off not being able to inspect the facility, why don't we at least give a conference first, see if we can reach out one more time and then go down that route? I think it's a little extreme to just jump straight to that for not being there when the time to inspect. Ms. Galvin, do you have a difference of opinion? Do you?
I agree. It was it says it was an unannounced inspection. So if the individual's not there, doesn't know they're coming, I don't want to hold them, responsible for an unannounced inspection. So I do think that we may be able to get more information if we have a conference, and you may wish to subpoena their appearance at the conference, so there's no misunderstanding.
So if they don't show up to the conference, then we'll move to hearings.
Mhm.
I'm fine with that. So that would
Okay.
be my new motion.
Ms. Galvin, I have a question though. If we subpoena them and we don't get a response before the deadline for the next hearing, next meeting in April. I mean, my concern is we keep kicking the can down the road if these guys are not going to respond to us.
So the subpoena would be for an appearance at the conference.
Can we send a subpoena to get a reply back asking if they're still operating?
I don't always believe that a subpoena compelling just a response to a board inquiry is that's an option that you have. I don't know if I would advise revocation based on that, but that is an option that you have.
Okay, so I have a motion, and do I have a second?
Second.
Yes, so it's just to go over what the motion is again, it's a conference, but if they do, and a subpoena to appear at the conference, if they do not appear, then we move to hearing.
Yes.
I have one quick question as well. If they haven't already responded to one subpoena, that seems to be
Right.
a pretty strong statement already. I mean, it's one thing, an unannounced visit, but then they get a subpoena and they don't respond to that. That seems there. I don't see the justification for that. Were they on the moon vacationing during that time frame?
Right. I mean, I agree. I was headed towards first having a hearing, but they're saying maybe have an intermediate step of conference.
I think in the meantime, the board trying to determine if they're open. I know the permit's open, but are they really in business?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
One more time.
One more
Okay,
chance.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 4X, Linton RX supervising pharmacy was found to be supervising 2 remote dispensing. What's that?
Oh, nothing. I took a breath.
Oh. A supervising
That's all.
pharmacy was found to be supervising 2 remote dispensing pharmacies without a deviation from the board. Ms. Richardson.
So there was a deviation in place. There was a deviation in place, and then they operated outside of the deviation.
Actually, what happened?
Do we know how long?
This is Sharon. Actually, what happened is, and you have a separate complaint. You'll be a conference. You'll be looking at regarding this permit holder at this coming meeting. But there were multiple ownership changes that occurred that the board was never notified of. And whenever an ownership change occurs, all deviations go away. And in order to use that deviation, they have to reapply. The new owners would have to reapply for that deviation. When it was discovered all these ownership changes had occurred, I did inform the representative of the permit that deviations were no longer valid. It wasn't an issue initially for them because they had actually never opened one of the locations who had an open permit, but they never began operation. And you can see in the documents in your book that I specifically notified him in July that that deviation was no longer valid. They would not be able to, operate 2 remotes until a new deviation was approved if they chose to go that route. In November, they decided they were going to make that other location operational, despite having been told that, and then began to supervise the 2 remotes. They chose to put a pharmacist in one of the locations. And I had explained multiple times that just because you chose to put a pharmacist in there is irrelevant. It's still a remote. If you want to convert it to a regular pharmacy, you can, but your permit is a remote. You have 2 remotes. You can only supervise 1 without a deviation. And so they elected to just go ahead and begin doing that in November after being told that their deviation was not valid.
Ms. Galvin, because this is related to deviation not being valid because of change of ownerships, would it make sense to hear the conference and then come back to this?
I do think that is makes more sense. You may have more information as a result of that conference that would help inform this decision, or at least hear them, conjunctively as far as fact gathering.
So then would this be a table, or what would you word that?
Given the order of the agenda, I would just pull it off for tabling till after the conference.
Okay, I'll make that my motion.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, before we adjourn, can we go back and just make sure board staff or IG has any questions that need to be clarified or answered? Ms. Galvin, you okay with your information? Mr. Gandhi, anything on your end with the board staff?
No, I believe we've got everything, Jen, correct? We do have everything on our end, Mr. Leva.
Yeah, I think I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, all right. Thank you, everyone. Look forward to seeing you is in person, right?
Yes, that is the plan, Mr. Chair.
Will there be the option? I plan to be there, but in the future, if like say I'm sick, will we have a hybrid option?
We will be moving forward with a hybrid. I think participation of board members is absolutely critical. So I would rather have them virtually than not have them at all. So yeah, we'll have both options. And I think, Mr. Chair, we at the last board meeting announced that meeting was this Wednesday, Thursday. It's not actually this Wednesday, Thursday, but next week.
Will we be able to see the person that's not in person?
Yes, we have quite large TV screens in our boardroom here, and you can clearly see everybody that's on the screen right now.
So some of the participants do you envision all of the participants appearing virtually and just the board and staff present in person?
Well, we obviously can't tell people not to come, but we would like to do a run with board members because there might be some training components. We've been trying to do it with 3 or 4 people in here, office staff members, to see how things flow, but that's a small group. When we're managing 9 board members and additional folks, it'd be nice to have a dry run and then have it open to the public afterwards. If the public wants to appear, obviously we can't tell them not to, but it is an open meeting law situation. But we would like to work out the bugs before we start bragging about our new boardroom.
Too late.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank
Thank you.
you. See you soon.